Introduce the room of mirrors. Overthinking is like being locked inside a room where every wall is a mirror. You see your mistakes reflected back at you, your worries multiplied, and no matter which way you turn, there's no door to step through. I remember nights like that, lying awake, replaying every choice, every word, until the silence felt louder than any noise outside. Maybe you know that feeling too. But here's the secret. That room isn't real. The door has always been there, hidden in plain sight. The Buddha once taught that peace isn't something you chase into the future or dig out of the past. It's what rises naturally when you stop gripping so tightly. In this video, I don't want to lecture you. I want to share with you 7 gentle teachings, like lamps placed along a dark hallway. Each one shows a way forward, not abstract theory, but small steps you can hold in your daily life. Together, they can help you soften the storm, ease the noise, and rediscover the calm that's been waiting in you all along. So if you've ever felt trapped in that room of mirrors, stay with me. Let's find the door and open it together. Number 1, the power of presence, lighting the candle in the dark. Presence often sounds like a cliché, be here now. But when you actually experience it, it feels like a secret you've been missing your whole life. Overthinking always lives somewhere else. In the yesterday you can't change, or in the tomorrow you can't predict. The present is the only space that doesn't demand you solve it, only that you live it. Think of sitting on a front porch as the sun goes down. The day is over, but your mind can still be trapped in the meeting that went wrong or in tomorrow's list of deadlines. Yet if you notice carefully, the evening breeze touches your skin. The colors in the sky shift moment by moment, and for those few breaths, nothing is broken. That's presence. It's not mystical. It's simply paying attention to what is already here. Buddhist teachings to stop overthinking begin with this exact reminder. The present moment is the doorway out of mental loops. The Buddha's wisdom tells us not to chase the past or dream anxiously of the future. Life only ever unfolds right now. When you anchor your awareness here, worry loses its grip because it cannot exist without a past to chew on or a future to invent. One man I knew worked in advertising. His head was constantly buzzing with what clients might say, what competitors were doing, what his boss expected. He told me he felt like his brain was a crowded office he couldn't escape. I suggested he try something embarrassingly simple. Every time he walked to the copy machine, he had to notice his footsteps. Not judge them, not count them, just feel the pressure of heel and toe against the ground. At first he laughed, it seemed pointless. But weeks later he told me, those little walks saved me. For a few seconds my mind was just quiet. That's the power of presence, it slips in through ordinary doors. Nature constantly models this lesson. Watch a hawk circle high in the sky. It isn't worried about what branch it perched on yesterday or which gust of wind might come tomorrow. Its entire attention is on the air beneath its wings in this very second. That's why it glides so effortlessly. Presence doesn't mean passivity. It means alignment with reality as it is. This is where mindfulness practices for peace of mind make sense. They aren't about forcing calm or erasing thoughts. They are about training the mind to come back, again and again, to the only place life actually happens. Your mind will wander, that's its job. The practice is noticing and returning, noticing and returning. Over time, that simple act of return builds a steadiness that overthinking cannot shake. Try this right now. Pause, take one breath in, feeling the cool air as it enters. Take one breath out, feeling the warmth leave your chest. That's it. You've just touched presence. It didn't solve all your problems, but for one moment you weren't tangled in them. This is how to stay present with Buddhist wisdom, not through dramatic rituals, but through simple awareness, repeated gently. And here's the beauty. Presence is portable. You can carry it into traffic, into a grocery line, into a difficult conversation. You don't have to wait for meditation cushions or retreats. Each time you remember to come back to now, you plant a seed of peace. So much of letting go of worries with Buddhism begins with this. Stop renting your attention to moments that no longer exist or haven't yet arrived. Come back to the breath in your body, the sights around you, the sensations under your skin. That's enough. Life is never hiding. It is only waiting for you to show up. Number 2, the art of release, opening the hand of control. If presence is the doorway out of mental noise, then letting go is the step that carries you through it. Overthinking thrives on our craving to control what was never in our hands. We replay the argument that already ended, or we try to script the future so perfectly that nothing can surprise us. But life isn't built to obey our drafts. It moves in its own rhythm. One of the deepest Buddhist teachings to stop overthinking is this: suffering comes less from what happens and more from the way we hold it. When the grip is too tight, the mind bruises itself. When we soften the grip, the heart has room to breathe. Think of standing on the beach, clutching a handful of sand. The tighter you squeeze, the faster the grains slip away. Open your palm and the sand simply rests there. Control is the fist, peace is the open hand. I knew a woman who spent years obsessing over whether people liked her. Every text unanswered felt like rejection. Every pause in conversation felt like judgment. It drained her to the point where she stopped enjoying friendships altogether. One day, she told me she was tired of her own mind. We worked on a simple practice. When her brain screamed, "They don't like you," she answered gently, "That's not mine to control." Over and over she said it, until it became second nature. Weeks later, she laughed. "It's like my mind finally realized I can't run PR for the whole world." Letting go gave her back the energy to love freely again. Nature tells the same story each autumn. The trees release their leaves not because they are worthless, but because holding on forever would block new growth. The falling leaves aren't failure, they are wisdom. That is how to stay present with Buddhist wisdom, to see that seasons shift, and holding on is not strength, but resistance. You can try this exercise right now. Close your eyes and imagine the worry that weighs heaviest on you. Give it a shape or a color. Now place it in an imaginary balloon, tie the string, and watch it float into the sky. Your logical mind might roll its eyes, but your nervous system will sigh with relief. That symbolic release is a form of mindfulness practice for peace of mind. It trains the body to feel what it's like to put something down. Letting go doesn't mean you don't care. It means you stop wasting energy on things that refuse to move no matter how hard you push. The ocean tide, the changing leaves, the wind shifting in the grass, all remind us life doesn't freeze in place, neither should we. This is the gentle strength at the heart of letting go of worries with Buddhism. You stop gripping every storyline, every prediction, every past mistake. Instead, you breathe into the moment, care where you can, and release what you can't. In that space, peace is not an idea, it becomes the air you breathe. Number 3, simplicity as freedom, clearing space for peace. Simplicity is a kind of quiet wealth. In a world that constantly shouts more, faster, louder, choosing less can feel almost rebellious. But the truth is, the more clutter we let pile up in our homes, in our schedules, and most of all in our minds, the harder it becomes to hear the soft voice of peace. Overthinking feeds on excess. Every extra choice, every new notification, every endless comparison adds another layer of noise. That's why one of the most powerful Buddhist teachings to stop overthinking is the embrace of simplicity. I once spoke with a teacher who confessed that she couldn't stop multitasking. She graded papers with the TV on, checked her phone while eating, and listened to podcasts while folding laundry. She told me, "If I'm not doing 3 things at once, I feel like I'm falling behind." But what she didn't notice was how drained she felt by the end of every day. When she finally tried sitting on her porch with just a cup of tea, no screens, no background noise, she said it felt almost uncomfortable at first. But then something shifted. The tea tasted richer, the breeze softer, the moment fuller. She discovered that her restlessness wasn't from doing too little, but from drowning in too much. Nature demonstrates this truth constantly. Think of a clear lake. When the surface is crowded with debris, the reflection is distorted. Remove the clutter, and suddenly you can see the sky mirrored perfectly. Or picture a desert landscape at sunrise. There's almost nothing there, just sand, light, and space. And yet it feels vast, alive, and deeply calming. That's the paradox. Emptiness, when chosen wisely, is not barren. It's abundant with clarity. Even in human life, simplicity has a magnetic beauty. Think of a friend who listens without rushing to fill the silence. Their presence feels nourishing because it isn't cluttered with unnecessary words. That's what mindfulness practices for peace of mind look like. A discipline of clearing the unnecessary so what matters can shine through. So how can we bring this into our lives? Not by forcing a minimalist aesthetic or giving away all our belongings, but by asking one honest question. What is essential right now? Maybe it's turning off your phone during dinner so you can actually taste your food. Maybe it's letting your desk hold only what you need for the task at hand. Maybe it's walking outside without earbuds so the rhythm of your own steps can be your soundtrack. These are small acts, but each one makes space for stillness. This is how to stay present with Buddhist wisdom, not by adding more rituals or more pressure, but by creating openings in your day where presence has room to breathe. Overthinking often feels like carrying a heavy backpack filled with things we never needed to pack. Simplicity is setting the backpack down and realizing how light we can actually feel. And there's another gift hidden inside simplicity: gratitude. When life isn't buried under piles of more, you notice the small things, the smell of fresh bread, the warmth of sunlight on your arm, the quiet joy of finishing one task with your whole attention. These moments don't shout, but they stay with you. So much of letting go of worries with Buddhism is simply learning what to put down. You don't have to untangle every knot in your head. Sometimes the wisest act is to stop tying new knots altogether. In simplicity, peace isn't something you chase. It's something that arrives on its own once you've made enough space to welcome it. Number 4, trust in change. Finding hope in impermanence. If there's one truth we resist most, it is that everything changes. Overthinking thrives on the fantasy that if we replay the past enough, we might freeze it, or if we predict the future perfectly, we might control it. But life has no pause button. It moves with or without our permission. The fourth of these Buddhist teachings to stop overthinking is learning to trust impermanence. Impermanence is not a threat. It's actually the reason we can heal, the reason seasons turn, the reason a night of grief can give way to a morning of hope. Without change, we would stay stuck forever in our worst moments. The mind forgets this when it worries endlessly, whispering, "This feeling will never leave. This problem will never end." But look closely. Has any storm in your life lasted forever? I once met a man who had lost his job and felt convinced he'd never recover. He lay awake at night, rehearsing every mistake, drowning in shame. But 6 months later, he was in a different role, one that fit him better. He laughed when we looked back together. I wasted so much time imagining a permanent failure. I couldn't see that life was already moving me forward. That's the truth Impermanence teaches. We suffer less when we stop insisting the present moment is the final chapter. Nature is full of reminders. A field of wildflowers bursts into color in spring, then fades quietly in autumn. The flowers don't cling to summer, they surrender to the cycle. Or think of a rainbow. It dazzles, then dissolves, yet no one calls it wasted. Its beauty lies in its briefness. So it is with our emotions, our seasons of struggle, even our joy. Mindfulness practices for peace of mind often begin with this recognition. When a difficult thought or emotion rises, we remind ourselves this is temporary. Like a wave, it has a beginning, a crest, and a fade. The act of watching the wave instead of fighting it is where freedom begins. You can try this right now. The next time anxiety tightens your chest, set a timer for 90 seconds. Breathe slowly and tell yourself this feeling is a guest, not a tenant. Observe what happens. More often than not, the intensity softens, proving that emotions move like weather. Clouds may cover the sky, but the blue is still there. This is how to stay present with Buddhist wisdom. To live with the awareness that nothing you experience is final. Joy isn't guaranteed, but neither is pain. Change is the great equalizer. Instead of fearing it, you can let it teach you resilience. When you embrace impermanence, you also loosen your grip on worry. Why? Because worry always assumes permanence, that this problem will always define you, that this feeling will always consume you. Remembering change is the heart of letting go of worries with Buddhism. It's not pretending everything is fine. It's knowing that nothing stays the same forever, not even your hardest nights. So the next time you find yourself caught in a loop of always or never, pause. Step outside if you can. Notice the shifting light, the way clouds reshape, the sound of wind moving through leaves. The world is reminding you nothing is fixed, and that's why hope is always possible. Number 5, you are not your thoughts, becoming the sky. One of the sneakiest tricks of the mind is convincing us that every thought it produces must be true, and worse, that it defines who we are. Overthinking is fueled by this trap. We mistake the passing commentary in our head for a reflection of our identity. But here's the liberating reminder from Buddhist teachings to stop overthinking. You are not your thoughts. Imagine sitting on a hillside and watching clouds drift across the sky. Some are light and harmless, others are dark and heavy, but none of them stick. They pass and the sky remains untouched. Your awareness is that sky. Thoughts are only clouds, sometimes dramatic, sometimes dull, but never permanent. The sky never becomes the storm. It simply holds it until it moves on. I once worked with a musician who was paralyzed by self-criticism. Every time he picked up his guitar, his mind screamed, "You're not good enough. No one will care about your songs." For years, he believed those words were his truth. But when he began to practice naming them simply as thoughts, something shifted. Instead of "I am worthless," it became "there is a thought saying I am worthless." That small distance gave him the freedom to keep playing. He didn't banish the thoughts, but he stopped becoming them. Nature offers the same lesson. Picture a river flowing steadily downstream. Leaves and branches float by, carried by the current. You don't jump in to chase every twig, you watch them pass. Thoughts are those floating leaves. Some you notice, some you ignore, but none of them require you to leap in and drown. Mindfulness practices for peace of mind teach us to observe without clinging. Sit quietly for 5 minutes and notice what arises. Maybe it's a worry about your bills, maybe it's a memory from childhood, maybe it's a random song lyric. Instead of arguing with it or believing it blindly, label it. Worry, memory, song, then let it drift away. Each time you do this, you strengthen the muscle of awareness that separates you from what passes through you. This is how to stay present with Buddhist wisdom, by recognizing that thoughts are visitors, not permanent residents. When you see them as temporary, they lose their power to control you. The storm of mental chatter becomes less intimidating when you realize it cannot define the vastness of your inner sky. And here's the key to letting go of worries with Buddhism. You don't have to erase thoughts or fight them. That only feeds the cycle. Instead, you step back and let them come and go. Freedom isn't the absence of thoughts, it's the ability to witness them without being carried away. So try this the next time you feel overwhelmed. Write down your racing thought on a piece of paper. Then beside it, write the words, "This is only a thought." Read it aloud. Notice how your body feels. Often that little act of separation breaks the spell. You remember that you are the observer, not the story. Overthinking loses its grip when you see thoughts for what they are, whether patterns, not identity. You are not the rain or the thunder. You are the sky, wide, steady, and always capable of clearing again. Number 6, the breath. Returning home to stillness. If presence is the doorway and letting go is the step, then the breath is the path beneath your feet. It's always here, always moving, and yet most of us ignore it until it runs short. Overthinking thrives when our breath is shallow and rushed. But the moment we return to it, the storm begins to soften. That's why one of the most practical Buddhist teachings to stop overthinking is simply this: follow your breath home. The breath is like a steady drumbeat under a song. Even when the melody gets chaotic, the rhythm never leaves. When you tune into it, you realign with something deeper and calmer than thought. It doesn't demand belief or philosophy, it only asks you to notice. I remember a college student who struggled with test anxiety. She said her brain felt like a pinball machine every time she opened her books. We tried a simple breathing pattern: inhale for 4 counts, exhale for 6. At first, she rolled her eyes, but within a week, she told me, "It's like my brain got a dimmer switch. I can actually calm it down instead of waiting to be overwhelmed." The exams didn't disappear, but her relationship to them transformed. Nature carries the same wisdom. Watch the ocean tide. Waves roll in, waves roll out. No matter how turbulent the surface gets, the rhythm of the sea remains. Or think of a field of tall grass swaying in the breeze. Each blade bends with the inhale of the wind and straightens with the exhale. The world itself breathes, and we are part of that rhythm. Mindfulness practices for peace of mind often begin right here with the breath. When your thoughts are racing, try placing one hand on your chest and one on your belly. Feel the rise and fall. Don't try to fix it, don't force it, just observe. The simple act of watching begins to anchor you. This is how to stay present with Buddhist wisdom, not by wrestling your mind into silence, but by giving it a steady place to land. The breath is like a lighthouse beam cutting through fog. You don't need to chase the ships of your thoughts. Just return to the beam again and again until clarity comes back. The beauty of this practice is its portability. You can do it at a stoplight, in a crowded grocery store, or in the quiet of your bedroom at night. It's the most intimate form of meditation because it's always available. You don't have to prepare or set the stage. The breath is the stage. Here's a simple exercise. Inhale deeply through your nose for 4 counts, then exhale gently for 6. Repeat this for 10 rounds. As you do, imagine you're releasing 1 layer of worry with each exhale. By the 10th, notice how your body feels. Often the mind has already quieted, proof that peace doesn't require hours of effort. Sometimes it only needs a few intentional breaths. This is the heart of letting go of worries with Buddhism. Each breath out is a release, a reminder that you don't need to hold everything all at once. Each breath in is an arrival, an invitation to be fully here. Overthinking doesn't stand a chance against the rhythm of something so ancient and steady. Your thoughts may wander 1,000 times. That's fine. Each time you notice and come back, you've already succeeded. Breath by breath, moment by moment, you discover that peace isn't a destination. It's been here all along, waiting for you to notice. Number 7, compassion, the soft strength of the heart. If presence steadies the mind and the breath anchors the body, then compassion is the soil where all the other practices take root. Without it, presence can become rigid, letting go can feel cold, and mindfulness can turn into just another task on your to-do list. But when you add compassion, the entire landscape softens. You stop treating yourself like a problem to be solved and start meeting yourself like a friend who's been struggling. One of the most overlooked Buddhist teachings to stop overthinking is that kindness toward yourself is not indulgence, it's medicine. Overthinking often comes from harshness. I should have done better. I need to figure this out. I can't believe I made that mistake. But notice what happens when you switch the voice. Instead of "what's wrong with me?" try "this is hard, and I deserve gentleness." The same situation feels completely different, not because it changed, but because the tone of your inner dialogue did. A young nurse I once worked with was drowning in guilt. Every shift she replayed every decision, convinced she had failed her patients. Her mind became a courtroom, and she was both the accused and the relentless judge. The turning point came when she learned to place her hand on her chest and whisper, "I did my best with what I had in that moment." She told me later, "It felt strange at first, but now it feels like I can breathe again." Compassion didn't erase her mistakes. It gave her the courage to keep learning without destroying herself. Nature models this softness everywhere. Look at how a meadow holds wild flowers and weeds alike without judgment, or how the ocean accepts every river that flows into it, no matter how muddy the water. Compassion is that wide embrace, the willingness to hold both your light and your shadow without pushing either away. Mindfulness practices for peace of mind become sustainable only when compassion is woven in. If you sit to meditate and your mind wanders 100 times, compassion is the gentle voice that says, "Good job noticing, let's return." Without it, practice becomes a performance you can fail. With it, practice becomes a home you can return to. This is how to stay present with Buddhist wisdom, not by being perfect, but by being patient. Compassion reminds you that presence is not a contest. It's a gift you offer yourself, even when you stumble. And in truth, compassion is the purest form of letting go of worries with Buddhism. You release the constant demand to be flawless. You let go of the endless measuring and comparing. In its place, you cultivate the simple courage to be human, to be tender, to be enough as you are. Here's something you can try tonight. Before you fall asleep, place your hand on your heart and silently repeat, May I be kind to myself. May I find peace. May I rest. Notice how your body responds. For many people, this simple act becomes the softest doorway into sleep because the mind finally feels safe enough to rest. Compassion does not mean excusing every action or ignoring growth. It means you grow from love, not from fear. It means you finally see yourself not as an enemy to be conquered, but as a companion to be cared for. When compassion joins presence, letting go, simplicity, impermanence, the awareness of thoughts, and the breath, something profound happens. Overthinking loosens its grip. The mind still chatters, life still brings its storms, but you carry within you a warmth that makes those storms survivable. You learn that peace isn't only found in silence or stillness. It's also found in the gentle way you hold yourself along the way. Conclusion: finding the door together. Maybe overthinking has been your constant companion, whispering in the night, pulling you out of the present, making you feel like life is something you can never quite catch up to. But what if the storm was never your enemy? What if it was only a reminder, pointing you back toward the calm you've been carrying inside all along? The Buddha's wisdom doesn't ask us to become perfect or to erase every restless thought. It simply invites us to notice, to breathe, to soften, and to return, again and again, until peace is no longer something we chase, but something we live. As you leave this video, I hope you carry not just words, but a question. What might open in your life if you stopped treating your thoughts as chains and started seeing them as clouds passing through the sky? If this touched something in you, stay with me here at Infinite Buddhist Teachings. Subscribe, share this with someone who needs it, and let's keep walking this path together, step by gentle step, until clarity and kindness are not exceptions, but the way we live every day.